Good day, and welcome to another jolting episode of Two Mics with Two Mics. I'm Pastor Mike, and I have a microphone.
And I'm Pastor Michael, and I too have a microphone. And today, we want to cover a little bit more ground on the subject of the covenant of marriage.
Of marriage.
Mirage. That is Pastor Mike, and that is his bowl haircut. And Cleo, who knows why she's right there. But that is a marriage photo, a wedding photo.
It's not a bowl haircut.
Oh, I'm sorry. What is it?
It's a manly hairdo.
I think I see a little chin hair right there. Is that right? Here, let me hold that up to the camera. Hold it up a little bit more. If you can find the chin hair, you win the prize.
There's no chin hair.
How old are you there?
18.
Ah, that's why there's no chin hair.
18. My wife was 18. She is a month and a half older than I am, though. That's all I'm saying. Because I choose life.
So, okay.
And we didn't have to get married at 18. We just did.
Now, let's go into a little bit of our marriage histories before we go into our discussion on marriage. So, when were you married? Where were you married? And how did you meet?
1875 in Tucson, Arizona. Met on horseback. No, just kidding.
People are going to start thinking you're Hindu. In my former life,
I
fought Jesse James in the Wild West.
We were married August 31st, 1972 in Goshen County, Wyoming, which is Torrington, even though we live in Nebraska, because we took off work to go get married. We both worked night shift, same place. We took off work, took off a few days, went out west to where her and my parents were living. Bridgeport, Nebraska is where her folks were from, and so the county seat was there in Bridgeport. So we went to Bridgeport to the county courthouse to get a marriage license, and they said, well, you have to, at that time, you each have to give a blood test.
Just to make sure you're human.
I guess. I don't know. And that the results will be back within 7 days.
So Wyoming was ahead of the curve at that time.
Well, yeah, so we didn't have 7 days off work.
Okay.
I mean, somebody had to keep us in the lap of luxury, and that was me. So we heard that Wyoming, you can get a marriage license and get married the same day.
Okay.
So we took her mother and her oldest brother, and we went across the border, because Bridgeport's close to the Wyoming border, into Goshen County, got the marriage license, drove around. This is no lie, I don't lie. Drove around until we found a pastor who was doing gardening, told him our situation, asked him if he would marry us, and he did.
Do you remember what he was gardening?
No.
Does Cleo remember?
She would probably remember.
She's a master gardener, yes. So,
gardener.
did you say how you met? I don't think you did.
No, we met in the summer right before our junior year. Because she's going to Bridgeport School, even though she lived on a farm 5 miles out of Bridgeport. She's going to Bridgeport High School. I'm going to Bayard, Bayard High School. They're 15 miles apart. And so one day I was dragging Maine, just like they did on Happy Days.
For those of us who aren't from Nebraska, what? Dragon mane. What does that mean?
Dragon mane. You have nothing.
We're not talking about the mane of a dragon.
No, you have nothing to do. And in small towns, you would just get in your car and you'd drive up and down Main Street. And typically there was a turnaround. For us, it was the train depot. At the end of that thoroughfare, we would turn around and head back the other way. And so one day actually, I think I came into town for something else because I was, not a Christian. And then I saw Cleo in her brother's car. I might find this out later. In her brother's car with some punk sophomore driving it. Yeah.
And that's how you met.
I saw the car first because it was 67 GTO red. I saw that. Then I saw this underclassman, because I'm going to be a junior, saw this underclassman who's going to be a sophomore driving. I thought, his name was Roger. I won't say his last name. And I thought, what in the world is this? And then I looked over and I saw Cleo in the passenger seat. And,
so Cleo caught your eye more than the car at that point.
Well, the car caught my eye first.
No, I know. I'm saying now by comparison.
Oh yeah. Cleo's, yes.
All right, points for Pastor.
So I flashed him. with headlights. Not
I flashed them, ran away, and that's how
flashed
I met.
them.
Great car. You're good looking. Bye.
Anyway, they pulled over, and I came up to the passenger side. Of course, I acknowledged Roger, and hey, Roger, and I said, hey, what's your name? She said, my name's Cleo. I said, well, I'm Mike, and it was all over. It was all over after that. We dated for 2 years. I broke up with her 4 times. She'll tell you it was 5, but in my mind it was 4. And anyway, we got married. And the reason she had that car, her brother was drafted by the Marines, who swear they never draft anybody, and he left her his time being in military. He left her his car to drive and his motorcycle.
Okay. So how long have you been married?
This August, it'll be 52 years.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah,
Look at that.
yeah. Even though I'm not yet 70.
You're tiptoeing that line, my friend.
She might be.
No. Okay, the points have been retracted. Well, for myself,
Yeah, I was going to say, tell me, pray tell.
Oh,
because
pray
I know you've had quite a sordid and checkered life growing up in New York after you pretty much walked away from your faith.
yes, I have a dating history, which is a who's who of human trash. Let's just
You
call a
also
spade a
had
spade.
a pistol to your head when you were 13.
I have had weapons pulled on me on different occasions, different types of weapons. One of my favorites was nunchucks. I was very young at that
A
time.
nun with chucks.
Yes, with gopher chucks. If anyone knows that reference from back in the day.
Okay,
So
threatened with nunchucks.
with the nunchucks, yes, Ivory handled nunchucks. It was very strange. That one I didn't ask for. Me and my friends were just throwing bottles, and some guy just came out of nowhere and basically whipped out some nunchucks and started chasing us. We were just throwing bottles in a parking lot, just watching the glass break. I don't know what happened there, but anyway. So being from New York, it actually has nothing to do with my marriage story. It has nothing to do with my wife. To a degree.
I beg to differ.
Well, to a degree. In the first episode, I talked about how at one point, after walking away from the Lord for about 10 years, going the complete opposite direction, total prodigal son, I decided I wanted to disprove the Lord's existence, and I threw myself into the mission field, Youth with a Mission. My first tour with being a missionary was actually in Colorado and then in Ireland. And we stayed kind of northern Ireland, and then we went to southern Ireland at one point, kind of all over a little bit. And then the second time I went to go be a missionary, there was a choice between going to Kansas City and joining IHOP, where as a new Christian drummer, go ahead.
Now, for those who don't know,
International House of Prayer.
All right.
As a Christian drummer, International House of Prayer will require me to play, I think they said something at the time, like 7 or 8 hours a day, something like that. Like you'd be worshiping constantly. And that was really appealing. But then the other option was go and study the Bible for 9 straight months chronologically, inductively. That is the equivalent to 4 years of seminary crammed into 9 months or a full year. And I did not want to do that because that doesn't sound appealing to me because I had major ADHD. I still have it. And I say I have it, meaning that I just have my attention goes everywhere. And it's really
you
worked
use
for
it
the
to
kingdom.
your advantage.
Oh, yes. I've learned how to. I've learned how to use it for the kingdom and whatnot. Anyway, so I felt very strongly to go to Hawaii and take this course. This course was offered in a couple different places, but I said, why not go to Hawaii? Then in my spare time, I can just go to the beach or something if I have spare time.
that's roughing it.
It is roughing it. And at that time, I was a Christian for about, I'm going to say 2 years, about 2 years. And there were possibilities of females, but I had grown a distaste for dating. I said, I'm not dating any girls anymore because they're psycho.
Or guys either.
I could say I never dated guys either. Even before I was a Christian, guys were never an option.
Okay.
They were never
That's
on the
good to
table.
know.
Cheetahs were, but you know. No, actually, that whole thing with the gender fluidity and all that was not really big back when I was dating. That came after. Thank the Lord. I didn't have to deal with that. Anyway, the whole transgender
So
stuff.
there was for a time just,
was just-
two genders.
Two genders, and you were into both or the same or the opposite. That was it. It was a simpler time. Anyway, so where was I? Oh yeah, so went to Hawaii, and I was doing a course, and my wife had a friend who was in my class. My wife was going there to do a counseling ministry school. She was from Colorado Springs, and so that's where we met through a mutual classmate of mine
In Hawaii.
in Hawaii.
Wow.
Now I was doing 60 hours,
Lover's
close to 60
paradise.
hours, about 40 to 60 hours of studying the Word, and then I would go off and walk next to the beach with my future wife, and I remember telling her within about a week of meeting her, because we were just talking. And I said, I'm not dating anybody unless she's my wife. I'm done with dating. And that scared the fire out of her, because followed up with that, I said I was called to ministry and full-time pastoring. Or full-time ministry, sorry. Full-time ministry. I said possibly a pastor, because I didn't know at that time. And she was a little apprehensive about that, because she's seen what full-time ministers, how they've fallen. She's seen the other side. And so she knew when she was going to date me, it was over. So anyway, meaning we're getting married. So we never, we courted for about, I'd say 6 months. 3 of those months being physically present with one another, and then 3 of those months her being in China, teaching in underground churches.
Okay.
And
In the actual communist country of China.
yes, she
Not
was
Hong Kong.
Nope, she was in all different kinds of places in China,
Okay.
and she was teaching. And then when she came back, we started dating for about 3 months, and then we went our separate ways. And I went and taught in Fiji and Samoa, as we talked about in the last podcast, and she went elsewhere to serve the Lord in the missionary capacity. And then we had a 10-month engagement, not by choice. I was ready to get married after 3 months.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a 10-month engagement, ended up getting married in Monument, Colorado, right around where Colorado Springs is,
Okay.
where
Pretty
we were
area.
living. Yeah,
Very
very,
pretty.
very pretty area. Ironically, at a ex-YWAM base. It was a YWAM base that didn't make it, and so a hotel bought it and then converted it back.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Kind of like 29 Palms.
Yes, yes. And so we got married, lived in Colorado Springs for about a year, and then we ended up in Nebraska, but we've been married for 12 years.
12 years.
12 years. We're actually 40 years and like a month behind you. So every time you're like, oh, it's 52 years, I'm like, we're going to be on 12. Like, I'm 40 years behind, so I get overshadowed by.
Well, there's reasons
Pastor
you make
Mike.
it to 52 years. There's reasons you make it to 25. I mean, there's lots of marriages don't make it to the 5th year.
Well, supposedly, the 50% of marriages thing,
Yeah.
that is supposed to be, I think, within the first year. 50% of marriages don't make it.
Wow.
Within the first year. And then I can't remember the statistic, but it's after year 7, pretty much you're cruising. And the percentage of divorce
in my
is
day, it was after
extremely
year
low.
5.
I think it's
They
7
said
now.
yeah, maybe 7 now because,
We should have a podcast on who they are.
well, because
Who are they, really?
they, the experts that monitor this kind of stuff, and people are seemingly a little more egocentric today than they were back then, and
Seemingly.
I mean, for the most part.
Yes, yes.
But anyway, so we were going to, obviously, we're talking about marriage, and we're
Yes.
talking about the 3 things. Now it's 4 because we're going to eliminate 1. The 3 things that are challenging in marriage, and this is by no means any particular order, but you'll have to make your own order. But 1 is communication. Mm-hmm. 1 is money. 1 is sex, which we've already talked about in a previous podcast, so we're not going to touch on that other than say we still believe in it, right?
Still love
2
it.
thumbs up.
Still
right?
enjoy it.
And then the 4th one,
Still have it.
are in-laws.
Family and in-laws, baby.
Because you don't
That's
just
a big
marry
one.
the husband, you don't just marry the wife.
Yeah, and we'll talk
Yeah.
about that.
But the first one's
yes.
communication.
Communication. So with 51 years, 51 point whatever years, going on 52. Regarding communication, give me 2 things that you found to be most helpful in your marriage regarding communication, whether it be communication with confrontation, communication in your plans, communication with your weeks and schedules? What have you found has really WD-40'd your marriage, so to speak?
Well, you should definitely, as a man, as the husband.
Are you sure?
Yes,
That blood test came back?
Yes. You should definitely include your wife definitely in all the major decisions, buying a house, buying a different vehicle.
When you say include,
investing, I mean,
can you break that down? Because I mean, hey, I'm buying a different vehicle.
Talk to them about it. Get their input about it.
Get their input.
See if they are in agreement with you on this, because marriage is a partnership. It's not a dictatorship.
So communicating is not, I'm going to do.
Yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to move here. We're going to buy this. Or I'm going to do this. and you're going to go along with.
So how would you approach Cleo with the possibility of getting a new car? How would you communicate that?
Possibility of getting a new car?
Yeah, if you're going to approach her, you're going to go to her and do what?
It'd be a different car, because having been a car salesman before, I would never buy a new car. I would take one if someone wants to get me one, but I would never buy one.
Okay, new chuck wagon.
There, like I just say, I mean, it's never been a problem, because we are always both interested in a better vehicle, one that's more reliable. That's the key. Is it reliable? I don't want my wife traveling out west to go visit relatives, which she's going to do here in a few weeks by herself in an unreliable car. So,
Yeah, my wife's got the better car.
yeah, and my wife has she has a better car. She has a Lexus, and I have a Toyota, which is a Lexus, just a souped-up Toyota. Right?
Yes. But anyway, so how would you approach her? Like, what would you say?
I say, hey, we need a new car. I think we need a new car. What do you think about getting a new car? Here's my reasoning why. This is why I think we need a new car. For you, I'm fine with this piece of junk I'm driving. But for you, you're my queen.
Oh, we're going to get this verified and certified.
You're my queen.
I'll get a document that gets Cleo
I
to
love you. I
sign
would
it,
take my coat jacket off and lay it in the puddle.
And this is where he knelt, and
across.
on a pillow there were the keys to the new Lexus.
This wasn't new, it's used, but yeah, new to us. So, no, that's what I would say. I would say, hey, our car's getting some miles on it, and, it's starting to get to the place where it's just repairs are going to be costly, and I think we need to look into getting a different car, and that's never been a problem. She's never said, no, we don't need that. Even cars we've bought that we didn't need that were just fun, like we bought a 87, you drove it for a while, Volkswagen convertible.
Yes.
That was bought it just for
The
the
go-kart.
fun of it. We have bought 67 Mustang Coupe in years past just for the fun of it. We're now thinking of selling I know for all you Harley riders, selling our Harley Davidson and replacing it with a convertible that we can just enjoy year round, not just in the summer. So that typically everything, whether it come to a house or whether it comes to a car, major purchases like that, like right now we got leaks in our, we have a sunroom that was there when we bought the house, but it's leaking bad. And so we're going to have to make a decision whether to just fix it, put a Band-Aid on it, replace the whole roof and the structure, or replace the whole thing. So that will be a conversation. But, we're not extravagant spenders. So typically purchases like that are fine.
Okay, so what's a nugget, a golden nugget of communication that doesn't have to do with spending? What's another thing that you would
listening when you get into arguments, because you're going to have arguments. And of course, in the past, when we first got married, I'd ask Cleo, hey, how do you, let's say we're shopping for towels for the bathroom or curtains for the living room. And I'd say, well, what do you think of this color? What do you think of this? And right at first, because of her background and things, she would just kind of, well, yeah, if you like it, I like it, kind of attitude, right? And then one day, she had an awakening.
I can have an opinion.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how she puts it. I have an opinion, and so I shouldn't be afraid to express my opinion. And so, like, one of the first times she did that, I said, well, what do you think of this color? No, I don't like it. And I mean, we're like not even 2 years into marriage. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't like it?
Blasphemy.
Off with her head. You know, I'd say, are you coming?
Betrayer.
I'd say, are you against me? Because that's the way I would take it. See, because we both came from such dysfunctional families, like most people do. And we were both heathen little devils. We didn't give our life to the Lord. But I'd say, I would take that as an affront against me. Like, what? Are you coming against me? No, I just have my own opinion. So one thing I learned early in marriage is, hey, you know what? My wife can have her own opinion, and we can disagree to disagree and still get along and do all the other good benefits of marriage. Amen. And so well, since you've talked about how you met your wife, what about you? And same question. What about you? How do you guys handle big purchases?
You know, when we handle big purchases, it is okay. So if we're going into the financial category with communication, because we seem to be going into the money / communication here.
You open that door.
The door is open.
The door's open.
Okay. So with that being said, we do look at our finances together. We do communicate what we're going to buy. But to be honest, I'm a minimalist. I don't take much it doesn't take much for me to be happy. I can have the same thing for years and years and years and still find like fun and pleasure in whatever it is.
Right.
I've had the same drum set since I was 18 years old.
Really? Since you were 18?
Yes. And
Now,
so
you're into weights. You're into working out. And you have basically a small YMCA
Correct.
gym in your garage. So
correct.
what about any of those purchases? Like, because weights equipment is not cheap.
It's not, but I'm going to say this. The Lord has blessed me mightily with people donating thousands of dollars worth of weights and equipment.
So you've never
I
come to your wife
barely-
and said, hey, I want to buy this $10,000 weight stuff, and what do you think? You've
Nope.
never had that conversation.
The only time that I've had a conversation regarding purchases, let's say with the gym, actually, this is recently. Only recently have I actually invested something in the gym, and it's all been aesthetics, really, and a few little odds and ends. But I said, hey, what do you think of me getting this? How do you feel about that? Can we afford that? Are we good on that? Because at one point here you go, you win.
Yep, I win.
At
win.
one point.
Used to do the books.
I used to do the finances in our household, and I'm very meticulous, and so every little thing was itemized. And my wife at that time spent money. She spent it, and it wasn't like she was getting extravagant things, and she'll say this herself, like she has expensive taste, but it's like she doesn't know until after she looks at it. She's like, "Oh, that's really nice." Dang it, because she doesn't like to spend.
Right.
And so she would spend, and at one point I said, this is kind of becoming an issue. Why don't you take the finances? Why don't you do it so you know what you're spending? And that kind of woke her up a little bit to where she took Dave Ramsey's financial course, and she was like, yeah, I'm gonna change these habits. And so that was extremely helpful. But in terms of communication, it's similar. I don't really know how else to say it.
We don't have issues really with big spending decisions.
No, we don't. We don't have that issue. In terms of communication, I mean, one of the biggest things that we found, because when we were first married, we had kind of a rough start. And this kind of goes into a little bit of the in-laws. Part of my family was not for our marriage at first, for some good reasons, for some bad reasons, but ultimately there was a pitting against with our marriage. I got married anyway.
Pitting against.
Yeah, meaning that I had
Explain that.
family members that were not for me getting married.
Did
to
they
my
try to
current
talk
wife.
you out of marrying your current wife?
To a degree, yes. I don't want to get into it too much because I'm not
Right,
trying to throw them
right.
under the bus, but yeah, more or less. There was efforts to stop the marriage from the wedding from happening at that time.
Okay.
And so
after the wedding, did they get on board, or was it difficult?
it took a little bit. We're good now, but it took a little bit. But the point is, when we were first married, we were having a lot of issues. And with communication, we communicated through yelling. Now, at first, my wife was very good at yelling. She's very soft-spoken. She had a talent for it, okay? That's how she communicated. And I, being the good Christian man, I would speak, I would respond with talking. But then my fuse would slowly go down as she would yell. And then when the fuse went to the bottom, oh, she got to learn both my ethnicities could yell. And I would yell, and then she'd be like, why are you yelling at me? And I'd be like, you were just yelling at me for like 15 minutes. Now that I'm yelling louder,
There is that
you're
song.
scared? Like, it was that. So our communication was absolutely horrible at the beginning of our marriage, but it got to a point as we worked out our salvation with fear and trembling,
Right.
as we pressed into the Lord to comfort us for all these things, to help us with our marriage, we learned to communicate differently. And a lot of that is, keeping your cool,
Yep.
being self-controlled. Don't think you heard what the person said. See if what you heard is what they said. There's a lot of the time
By recommunicating
by
it back to them.
recommunicating. Yes. So there are lots of times where my wife will say something and I will say, okay, so is this what you mean? And I'll repeat it. Or is this what you mean? Because I could take this in two different ways. And she'll say this. And the same thing goes for her to me. If you are repeating, it's active listening. That's what it is.
Okay.
It's active listening. It's repeating what the person said back to you to really make sure that you're getting what they're putting down. Because even the person, even your wife or your husband, when they're telling you things, when they're trying to communicate, they might not be communicating the way that they think they're communicating.
Yeah, I heard one guy put it this way. They're kind of like a football diagram. They're saying X, but you're hearing O. And so you want to do exactly what you did. You repeat it back, they repeat it. One thing that helped my wife and I, and she was the one to bring it up and correct, was she said, when we argue, when we have a discussion, which is what we like to call them, when we have a discussion, it would help. She said, Mike, it would help if instead of you just accusing me and telling me how I think or telling me how I behave, if you would say, it seems to me that. It seems to me that. Those 5 words. And she said that would really help because the other way you're kind of stating it as a matter of fact, and this way you're kind of leaving it open. So sure enough, next time we argued or discussed, I said, well, Cleo, it seems to me that, and then say whatever I say. And she'd laugh a little bit because she knew I'd picked that up from her. And
there's other ways to say that, like,
Yeah.
what I heard is this.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that right?
But for
Is
us,
that correct?
it seems to me that. It seems to me that you're overreacting. It seems to me that you're not understanding the situation. It seems to me that you may have a twisted version of the truth. It seems to me that instead of you have a different version of the truth, you're feeling angry, you're not thinking straight.
Yeah, a lot of therapists will say, stick to I statements. That's what they'll say. What I feel is, what I perceive is, what it seems to me is, and so on. Because then that way you're not throwing the label at them and saying, this is what you're saying, and now they have to kind of fight their way out of whatever label that you've stuck on them or vice versa. But I'll say this is a little bit of a challenge, and I'd love to move on to money. Here's the challenge. For the man, and this is very important with communication, for the man, you're supposed to be leading the household. There's a reason why females have more emotional capacity. They have more empathy. That's why females get into nursing more so than engineering. And guys get into engineering more so than nursing because there's empathy, and guys want to know they like to know how to fix things. They like to, they're fixers, and females are empathetic. They have a lot of emotion, and it's great. Because honestly, when there's a male nurse, you usually go, there's something off here. Usually.
It's not, if you're a male nurse, we love you. We appreciate you.
But usually. Anyway, point is, you haven't met many male nurses, have you?
No, maybe 5 in my whole lifetime.
Wow.
I know it. And I'm old.
In 53 years. Anyway.
Let me. So you that are watching this. Let me get my 2 things in before I forget.
Go ahead.
So try to tell your wife when you're having a discussion, it seems to me that, and number 2, this is from my aspect, my point, let them have an opinion. You know, they just because they don't agree with you doesn't mean that they disdain you. No, it just means they have a separate opinion. Go ahead.
No, and just to finish the point that I was making, it's simple. As a man, don't engage in your own anger. The anger of man, the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God, even if your wife is being irrational. Or wives, if your husbands are being irrational. But I'm specifically talking to the men here. When it comes to communication, you don't have to communicate through anger. You don't have to communicate through yelling. And that's sadly what we hear it from wives. That's how a lot of men will communicate. Either they'll shut off, they'll get extremely angry, or they'll yell. You have to actually make that stand for your marriage in the area of communication to go, I am not going to engage in a way that not only hurts my wife, because you're hurting yourself. When you hurt your wife, you're hurting yourself. You're really
Yeah, because you're one.
You become one flesh. You're hurting yourself, but when you engage that matter, you're hurting yourself, but you're also sinning against the Lord. I mean, really, what was it? It's God's daughter first.
Yep.
Your wife second. And so it's important to actually take that stand against that type of communication, because that dysfunctional family thing that you talked about, a lot of people have seen dysfunctional marriages in their lives, whether it be divorce, whether it be abuse, whatever it is. That's why the Word of God is so vital to marriage, because the guy made it. The guy being God, he invented marriage. He made marriage. He made man and woman. He made the covenant of marriage. I think he knows exactly how it's supposed to function,
right?
And gives you the tools.
And
to
he gives
make
you
it
the
function.
instructions. He
And
tells the
instructions.
husbands what to do. He tells the wives what to do. Like my family, my mom and dad were divorced. My sister was divorced. My grandmother was divorced. My dad was married 5 times, but that's not me. When I got into Christ and became a new creation and decided, you know what, Cleo and I decided at one point early in our marriage, the divorce is not an option. Don't even speak that word out of your mouth, because it's not an option. And that helped a lot. Talking about communication. Don't throw the divorce word around.
We did
in
that. We did that in
communication.
year one, that year that we were trying to figure things out. Well, why don't you just divorce me?
Yeah.
Then there was a point, exactly what I just said. I had to take a stand. And I said, we're not going to use that word again in this house.
Yeah, there you go.
And she agreed, but I had to wait a little bit for the dust to settle.
Yeah, because they're
Sometimes a
they're
timeout's
different.
okay to communicate properly.
And a lot of times
That's a
the
big
woman
one.
wants a timeout.
Yes, a man's like, I want to fix it now, and a
Yeah.
female, and I had to learn this, and sometimes I really have to pull back the reins on myself. But the reality is that a lot of ladies, they
you
need a
gotta give 'em
moment,
space.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you're probably going to communicate better when the dust has settled a little bit, calmer minds.
And I want to recommend to our listeners, there is a Christian comedian counselor, yes, CCC, named Mark Gungor, Gungeror, Mark Gungor. You should find him on YouTube. He does this instructional for marriages, instructional video called A Tale of Two Brains. And so he'll have 2 statue heads, and the hair and the skin's been peeled back to reveal, the brain. And he just goes into, and he's qualified. I mean, he's like doctorate degree and all of that, as Julius would say. And so he goes into how a man's brain works, how a woman's brain works. And there's always exceptions to the rule, right?
There are some mannish women out there.
There are.
And there's some very
Just say, like,
familiar men.
For instance, like us men, we're like a waffle or a file cabinet. We typically put things in boxes or in files. We even have a file that has nothing in it. So when your wife said, "What are you thinking about?" Nothing. See, they don't know that. They can't think of nothing. That just doesn't happen for most of them. But we even haven't. And he said the women's brain is that's what he said, not me. But I agree with him. Like a spaghetti, plate of spaghetti, everything's interconnected. So that's why when you're dealing with this noodle, right? And if you're married, you know this, fellas. If you've been married any number of years, you can be in a present discussion, argument, and talking about that noodle And yet that noodle goes all the way through and touches another noodle that happened 8 years ago. And that comes up. Tell me I'm not right.
I love spaghetti.
Mark Gungor, watch anything he has about it.
Okay, so moving on here, because with communication, there's just a lot of areas we can go.
But I got one more thing. My wife told me this. This would be quick. One more thing. She said she came home one day, or I don't know. Anyway, we were both together. That's a good thing. So we're there, and she says, you know, you never asked me how my day was. Yeah, and I didn't. I just assumed she's still breathing. She had a good day. Amen. So the next day I come home. I say, hey, honey, how was your day? She goes, I said, you can't do that. You can't tell me to ask you how your day was, and then when I ask you how your day was, laugh because you know I'm primarily asking you because you told me to.
Something just dawned on me that needs to be said
Say it.
for communication.
Yes.
Men need to communicate sexual desire. We already talked about
Explain
sex.
that.
I will. This is very important.
This might be a real.
This is actually really important.